Colleagues, shall we give it another minute? I think we are standing at 28 people who's come in the last minute or so. About 10 people have come in the last minute. So we can give it just another minute.
Okay.
Thanks very much.
Good morning, colleagues. Can you all hear me?
I can hear you, Moshe.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, colleagues, once more. My name is Mr Moropa, and I would like to welcome you to our 5th session of our hour-long IGBIS conversations with leaders in the library and information science sector, where we aim to motivate and encourage our members to take up leadership positions in IGBIS, LIASA, and in the broader LIS profession. We ask our leaders to share their experiences, career progression, and key aha moments that kept them motivated and inspired in their leadership journey. Before I introduce our speaker today, I would like to go through the program. We will have our LIS leader, and then after that, we will have a Q&A session that will be facilitated by Sarah Golby. And then after Sarah, we'll have thanks and closure that will be done by Ingrid Henrysting. And then just a few reminders, colleagues, the session will be recorded, and then you're also welcome to post your questions in the chat function throughout the session. And then there will be a link in the chat function. Just be on the lookout during the session. And then our leader today is Mr. Robert Moropa. Mr. Moropa stood as LIASA president for the 2002 to 2004 term, and he was bestowed LIASA's Executive Librarian of the Year Award in 2019. Mr. Moropa has held positions in academic library services at the University of Transkei, University of South Africa, and most recently, heading library services at the University of Pretoria. Under Mr. Moropa's leadership, the UP Library became the first in South Africa to launch and use a service robot known as Libby. In 2020, he co-wrote a chapter of Facet Publishings titled Bold Minds, Library Leadership in a Time of Disruption. Apparent through his LIS career, Mr. Moropa's embodiment of leadership qualities and his encouragement of leadership potential and innovation. Mr. Moropa stands as an exemplary leader and active contributor to the LIS profession. I hope we are all looking forward to hear from Mr. Moropa. Mr. Moropa, over to you.
Okay, start the video. Okay, I'm trying to start the video. It says you cannot start your video because host has started.
Host, please.
Okay. Start my video. Oh, there you are. Thank you. Okay, good morning to all of you. Yes, it is. Is this? No, let's see. Yeah, sorry, we just. Yeah, let's go there. It's this one. It's this one. see. Oh, hang on, I think it's on. Yeah, it's this one. Yeah. Sorry, Lewis is helping me here with the sharing of the screen. While she's doing that screen, yeah, and then we can just go to here. Play this. The screen visible.
We can see the screen now, Robert. I think you just need to go to the first slide and put it on PowerPoint slide.
Yeah, put it on,
what is it called? Mode? Yeah.
Yes.
That's right. Yes, yes. Okay.
Okay, excellent.
Okay, there you are. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, thank you very much, Meshia. And I just want to also thank the leadership of IGBIS for inviting me to share with you about my career. I just wish to point out that I'm not going to talk a lot about myself. What I want to do is just to sketch, put you in the picture, and I'm aware that there could be quite a number of new members of the profession who perhaps may not have heard about this Robert Moropa. And so it is really for their benefit, kind of just to share with them a bit about my career. But what I really want to focus on is what is it, the strategies that I've used to help me become a successful leader. I'm hoping everybody can hear me. Am I audible? Yeah, okay. Can I continue then? Okay, you will see that on my first slide, I just listed, the positions that I've occupied, and the years, and also the institutions where I was. So you will see I really started I was mainly in academic libraries, so I started my career at Facet. After I qualified in 1978, I was then offered a position in 1979 as an assistant librarian up to 1981. And then I proceeded to UNITA, which is now known as WUSU. So I'm really not going to go down that list. I think you will have the slides, and you can look at it if you are interested in that. Maybe what I need to talk to you about, maybe some of you will want to know why I became a librarian. What motivated me to become a librarian? Well, while I was still at school, at high school, actually, I was in the matric class that was doing this science, and so I thought I would go and do BSc, but I couldn't go to university after I passed my matric. I then had to work for a year. And during that year, I used to go to the state, it was at that time, state library. And I used to go there quite often. And then one morning when I got there, there was a lady called Miss Peters. She then took my books and she said to me, go down. She gave me the address, and I went to a place near Marabastad. That's where the TPA, I think many of you don't know what it stood, Transvaal Provincial Administration. They had a library, they had a position. So, and that's where I went, and that's when I started. And it opened my eyes to the world of librarianship, you know, and it is during that time when I decided, okay, fine, I think this is what I want to do. Then the following year, I registered and I was accepted at Fort Hare, and then I completed then my studies in 1978. So you could say that I stumbled into being a librarian. Okay, and then maybe just a few highlights, you know, just a context in terms of what is it that really motivated me. You will remember that in the 1970s, those were the heydays of, you know, apartheid. And for example, the reason why I went to Fort Hare is because I could not be accepted at Wits, for example, because of the apartheid policies. So one thing that really, shall I say, kept motivating me was my rejection of how I was characterized by the proponents of apartheid. You know, that as a Black person, I'm inferior, that as a Black person, I don't, you know, I don't have the skills or the qualities to excel in life. And I remember having these conversations with myself that, no, that's not who I am. And I kept telling myself that I'm created in God's image. And I don't think God creates second-rate people, and especially if they are created in his image. So this is something I found myself repeating, you know, in my head. You know, we all have this self-talk. We talk to ourselves, or, you know, and this is what I kept, and this has motivated me even when I was doing my work. So I then said to myself, I'm going to do my work to the best of my ability. And I think it is that approach that catapulted me to leadership position at a very early age. For example, when I was appointed in 1998, when I was appointed, no, 1990, I was appointed the University Librarian at UNITA. I was the youngest, I was 6 years old. And at that time, I was the youngest head of an academic library. I believe it's just
Robert, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Your sound is getting a little bit bad. It seems to be better when you're leaning forward. If you lean a bit forward, yeah.
Okay.
That seems to be.
Is it better? Okay.
Yeah, it's better. Thanks very much.
See. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Yes. So I don't know which part you missed, but I mean, I say what really part of my motivation at the early ages of my career.
Where did you stop? Oh, we seem to have lost the connection. Kagiso, can you still hear me? Oh, there we go. Robert, we just seem to have lost the connection there for a bit. I'm not sure whether that was perhaps on my side.
Okay.
So you were asking where you stop. You said that, this is my recollection.
Yeah, okay.
That you were catapulted into leadership at a very early age.
Oh, yeah. I see. Yes, yeah.
Because of your self-talk.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. So yeah. Yes. Yes. So I then really what I did at that time. You know, I think I can perhaps talk about it now, because now that I'm retired, I've had time to reflect, you know, to see what is it that I did that worked. And there are other things, of course, that I did that didn't work. But I believe this self-talk that I used to have, you know, to myself whenever I was tackling a task and so on, I think that really assisted me, because I was surrounded by colleagues. Some of my colleagues would be people who would want to do very little, you know, And I remember, for example, some of the conversations that I used to have with some of the colleagues while I was still in the position of assistant librarian. Because I was heading a unit within the UNITRA library, I became part of the management team. And I remember offering to write reports. For example, when we needed to write a report on the budget, for example, or motivate. And I would offer to do that. And some of my colleagues would come and say, why do you do that? You know, because you're going to work hard and write this motivation. And then the head of the library is simply going to attach their signature and they get the money and you don't, you know? And it's part of my self-talk that made me realize that there was something wrong with that kind of thinking. And so I, for example, would then, I would acquire the skill because I would draft a report, take it to the head of the library, and then they would look at it and it would make their work easier to panel beat a draft that I would have prepared. And I would see the improvements that they made, and that helped me to acquire skills that enabled me to write even more complex report at a later stage. So this is just one example. You know, it's not that I had encouraging, I did have colleagues who discouraged me, but I think because of my self-talk and because of my determination to disprove this notion that as a Black person, I'm inferior. I'm not inferior to anybody. So that's what I used to tell myself. My work should therefore not be inferior, you know? So that's what those are the things that I used to tell myself. And so, and then I then, as I say, I then was catapulted, I think, into leadership a position. For example, you will see there in this slide that I moved from being an assistant librarian to being a deputy. There were ranks in between, but I simply, was promoted to being a deputy, right from the assistant librarian. Actually, I had not even applied for the position when it was advertised. But on the closing date, the head of the library called me and said, but I don't see your application here. So I said, no, there are other people, I believe, who are senior to me. And so I thought, I stood no chance. And he simply just shoved the form and he says, please complete this form and let me have your CV before the end of the day. So yes, so I believe that this is now that when I reflect, I realize that I think this as a self-talk and the approach that I had helped me quite a lot. Okay, so what I want to do now is and of course, I then got involved in, in the leadership of the wider LIS profession. And you will see on my CV that it talks about me being a participant in terms of the unification of the library profession. So for the sake of the younger members of the profession, maybe, especially those who were born after 1994, you may not be aware that there was a lot of, there were divisions along the lines of the, the apartheid policy. We had an association for Blacks, we had an association for colored. There was SAILIS, which was an association for white people. And so towards the closer to the in the early 1990s, efforts were then made to bring about unification. And I became an integral part of that process in unifying. I'm not going to go into detail, and then of course this led to the formation and creation of LIASA, and to the launch. It was then LIASA was then launched as a result of the efforts of the people. There were quite a lot of other people who were involved, but I was a part of that. But I can just highlight one person I think that really assisted us in coordinating this, a lady by the name Mrs. K. Raseroka, and she became part and parcel of this. So I was involved in that process, and to my surprise, and then what I did, I moved away. After LIASA was launched, I moved away, and then, as you know, Ellen was the first president, and she served 2 terms. And towards the end of her final term, I was approached by some members who were in the executive to stand for nomination for elections. And it must have come to me as a surprise. It came to me, of course, as a surprise, because I was no longer sort of, you could say, involved in the day-to-day affairs of LIASA, because I deliberately decided to move away, because I believe that if you've done your work as a leader, I believe in the saying that a leader you work yourself out of a job. So I thought there were other people, I think, who will do much better than me. But I was asked then to be nominated. I agreed. And then that was in 2002. I was then elected president of LIASA. So what I want to do, in the interest of time, and maybe I can answer questions, I want to go to my next slide, because I think a big question that may be looming high in your minds is, but what was the secret of your success? And I think this is really what I want to focus on at this moment. Unfortunately, I find that, and I also did this quite a lot, we use strategies that are ineffective, and in fact that disempower us. For example, I read quite a lot of books, written by Stephen Covey, and I remember reading them quite, early in my career, and this model that I'm going to use, which was developed by him, will help me to share with you strategies that I've used. You will see there that there are 2 circles of concern and circle of influence. Now, just to bring you into the picture, the circle of concern, in it, we find a lot of things that are happening around us over which we have no control. I mean, such as, for example, interest rates going up, the petrol price going up. We have no control over those things. We had the apartheid system at the time. We had no control. You could say, me as a person, I had really no control over that system, and so on. And then the circle of influence incorporates things that I have complete control over. Now, here's the, I explained there, most of the issues that fall into the circle, on this circle, are those over which we have little or no control, such as, the value of the rand, what other people think about you. You have no control about that, or what they say about you. The behavior and actions of others, and so on. No control over that. Now let's move on to the circle of influence. This has things you have complete control over. Example of these things are, I'll just mention a few, our spiritual well-being, our spiritual how well we're doing spiritually, it's within your control. Our mind, we've got control over our mind, which includes our thoughts, our emotions, and imagination, our growth and development, and how we relate with other people. We have control over that. Now, what I want to, what I've learned through this model is this: the circle that you focus on, you spend most of your time focusing on, that circle becomes bigger, and the one you neglect becomes smaller. Now, unfortunately, we are programmed to focus on the things that are happening around us. And we find ourselves worrying and being anxious and so forth. And we pay very little or no attention to the circle of influence, the things that we have control over. In fact, what then tends to happen, we begin to see ourselves the way other people see us, you know, and we adopt this, you know, perception that other people have about us, and we accept it, and so on. So this, I would like to point out, it's really a disempowering strategy. So I would then encourage you to shift your focus to the circle of influence. And what does that entail? It entails, for example, taking full control of your self-talk. You know, as I mentioned earlier, we talk to ourselves. And you know, someone has pointed out that the things that we say to ourselves are things that we could maybe even sue other people for saying them to us. But for some reason, we give ourselves permission to say those things to us. An example is, you know, I mean, how many times have you told yourself that, oh, you know, I'm stupid, you know, I can't do it, I can't manage, I can't do this. And you focus on things that you cannot do. And so you focusing on the circle of influence includes, among others, managing your self-talk. I believe you need to say, you know, I'm capable, I'm perfectly capable to achieve this, I'm perfectly capable to attain this. If you lack skills in a particular field, no one should stand in your way. Don't allow anybody to stand in your way to acquire those skills. If it is about, for example, being a leader, look around. There are people who are successful leaders. If you say to yourself, I really also want to be a leader, what blocks you or what stops you from going to people who are successful leaders in your organization, in your community, and say, you know, how do you do it? You know, can you share some ideas with me? And then in that way you learn and you then empower yourself. When that happens, you know, when you do that, this is what then happens. This slide here shows that if you then begin to pay attention, to focus on your circle of influence, it then begins to grow. And it then you begin to have impact on some of the things that you may have thought you have no control over. But on the other hand, if you then, unfortunately, which is what many people do, they focus on the circle of concern. They focus on those things that they cannot control. That circle then becomes bigger, and it then makes you to shrink and to have, disempowering thoughts about yourself. You feel overwhelmed. You can't think straight. You don't know where to start. And this is a wrong strategy. So I really would want to share with you that, just to give you an example, while I was a student during those days of apartheid, I remember vividly that as we were doing the history of libraries in South Africa, and we were going through a list of libraries in South Africa. And I developed a desire at that time, a desire that says, it would be nice to be a head of one of these libraries. And because I was born in Pretoria, so the UP became one of the targets of my thoughts in terms of becoming the head of, if I were to become a head of the library, I said, oh, it would be wonderful to be a head of, let's say, the UP library. And that was in the 1970s, during the times of apartheid. So I realized that I did not allow the apartheid system to discourage me from seeing myself as qualifying to be the head of such a library. So, and this is just one example that I can give, and this is one of the things I believe that helped me and so on. And maybe in conclusion, I just want to then say, when I was the head of the library, the library, I'm sure Marcia can attest to this, and some of the colleagues, the library used to do very well. I'm hoping that it still does. They used to measure the effectiveness and how well a library is performing by running a survey amongst clients, your clients, and your clients would then evaluate you. The library would come out top every year. And the approach I took was this, that when the university came out with a strategic plan, my approach would be to study that plan very, very carefully, and then to take the approach that says, how can I empower the library to be effective in supporting the university in that strategic plan? Because I saw the library as a key role player. And so I'd say, okay, let's focus on how we can contribute effectively. And I believe that this is what also then led to us then coming out with, because we saw when the new principal arrived, we had a conversation with him, and he was very keen on 4IR. So I said, well, I think the library can play a role in 4IR. And this is, we shared with colleagues and so on. And I believe that's why we were then able to produce Libby, because we just strengthened ourselves and we believed we could do it, and we did it. So this is really what I would really say in a nutshell. I mean, time does not allow me to say more or to go into detail because I know that you encounter problems and encounter difficulties. How do you deal with them? Unfortunately, time doesn't allow me to share with you how I overcame, some of the challenges. Maybe what I should do is to stop and maybe answer questions. Yes, I think that let me do that. Okay, Marcia, are we in your hands now?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Moropa, for sharing your career path and experiences with us, and then as well as sharing your strategies for becoming a successful leader, and then taking note the circle of influence. Thank you very much. I will then hand over to Sarah, who will be facilitating the Q&A. Over to you, Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you, Mersha, and thank you, Mr. Moropa, for an insightful conversation. So far, we have 2 questions from, I believe it's a Timofana. He says, or they say, Mr. Moropa, what do you think your ex-colleagues and subordinates will say about you and your leadership style? And secondly, they ask, if you were to go back to your previous job, how would you do things differently? Was there anything that you would do differently?
Okay. All right. Let's start with how I think my colleague would think about me. Well, I mean, look, quite a number of them they've come to me and, you know, and have, you know, sort of confirmed this view that I'm a caring leader. My style of leadership is you know, servant leadership. I believe that a leader is not, you know, it's not someone who should, you know, who is bossy, but I believe a leader facilitates. You know, that's the style of management that I adopt. But that does not mean that I shy away from being decisive. You know, there are moments where you can't consult forever. You need to get to a point where, you know, I mean, just to give you an example, when we introduced Libby, we had people who were unhappy. And they were talking about, oh, you know, we're going to lose jobs and so forth. Now you're bringing this, you know, I gave myself time to listen to what their concerns were and so on. And I then gave myself time to talk to them and to assist them in terms of realizing that, you know, this is the time, this is where we are. This is our organization is in an environment that is moving towards, you know, 4IR. That's where we are. And so why I believe we would then be doing the library a disservice if we did not come on board. So, but I'm using this example just to show that you do talk to people, even those that are opposed, maybe to the direction that you as a leader wants to take. And I believe the facilitation is you try and assist, understand where they are coming from. And also, I believe I would have been checking my responsibility as a leader if I would have then said, there are people who are not happy, so let's not do it. Because what's going to happen is later stage, the library would be rendered irrelevant. And then they would say, aha, you see now you have let us down. So I believe as a leader, you've got to have a vision, and it's important that you facilitate and assist and understand, work with the team, with your team. And then, of course, the other question was, what is it that I would do differently? What I would do differently is I would do more. I realized there were times maybe when I doubted myself. There were times when I allowed the environment, the negative environment to overwhelm me. I would do more in terms of strengthening myself from within. You know, so that's what I would do different. If yeah.
Thank you, Robert. And I mean, to that end, what sort of advice would you have for that? And you know, you talk about having that doubt when things get overwhelming. Have you sort of discovered any strategies that would have helped you back then, now, or that you use now to strengthen yourself in the face of that kind of adversity?
Okay, you know, one thing, there is a certain level of control that we have over our environment. For example, a lot of people, they spend time with people who are negative in terms of the way they view the world. You know, I don't know if you have come across, you know, if you do have people who complain all the time. You know, they are not happy about this. They're, you know, someone comes up with it, they are not happy about that, and so forth. They just complain all the time. One area of control that you have is to disconnect yourself from such people, you know, because sooner or later, you will also be singing the same songs that they sing of complaining. And my advice would be then, you know, choose people that will empower you, people that will challenge you, you know. So that is one practical thing that it's something that I'm sure you can, you know, do immediately, you know. And for example, look at the books you read, you know, the books that you read, you know, it should be books that contribute positively in your growth, towards your growth and development, you know. So it's, yeah, so this is what I would really, these are just practical examples that I would give. Manage your self-talk. You know, what is it you're saying? Many people don't even know that they are talking to themselves. You know, they don't even know that. But you do talk to yourself, you know. I'll just share with you, there's one of books I read, it's by the guy named Bandura. You know, he did an experiment and found that, he did lots of experiments, but he found that people who don't have a skill to do a task, to carry out a task, but who tell themselves that they are going to do it. He has found that people who have that conviction that they will succeed in carrying out a task for which they have no skill or training. He found that those people, in most cases, they tend to be more successful than people with the relevant training for the task. You know, so it just shows how you're managing your mind, your thoughts, how important that is. You know, just carefully, you know, maybe the task that I can give you, and I suggest that you embark upon, is just check, you know, today, write down the thoughts that you entertain, you know, write them down. And then you're going to find that in most cases, it's negative thoughts that disempower you. And you need to begin to say, no. I'm not going to, that's not who I am. You know, you need to begin, we're programmed, for example, to visualize negative. And when something happens, you already visualize yourself being in trouble, or instead of kind of having a cool head and say, okay, fine, what do I do now? You know, and then you realize that you've got a lot of resources within yourself that can enable you to overcome a difficult situation.
Very true, so very wise words, yes. Thank you, Mr. Moropa. It's a lot of food for thought. Chapisha wants to know, after retirement, what is it that you do, or what is it that you do for the library and information science sector and LIASA? As a retired leader, I believe the leader in you will always be there, and with your passion for the LIS sector and LIASA as a professional body.
Okay, yes, yes. I had quite a number of ideas and all that, but then we had COVID, and it kind of you know paralyzed everyone. But I'm willing to for example you know, participate in terms of, you know, if LIASA has got mentorship programs, participate in mentorship programs, mentoring young leaders, talking to young leaders, coaching leaders. This is something that I would really, you know, gladly do. And that is why I welcomed this opportunity, you know, when Fatima approached me. And I said, wow, it's in line with, you know, what I've been thinking and what I would like to do, you know. So that is the one thing, yes. But I also need to mention that in terms of the profession wider, you know, sort of the sector, I've been approached by a former colleague, and unfortunately we are at a stage where we can't talk about this yet. But I was approached by a former colleague who's got some brilliant ideas. And it is interesting because when he approached me, he said to me, you know, you asked me to do this assignment, you know, at UP. And I realized that there were gaps in the profession and I would like to do something about it. Can you help me? So I'm working with that former colleague, and hopefully, maybe in a few years' time or so, you will get to hear about the project that we're working on. It's an innovative project, a project on innovation. Yeah.
That sounds exciting. If you say a few years, you're going to keep us waiting.
Well, yeah, it's just that it's quite complex, you know. It's just the complexity, you know, that would cause the delay. But otherwise, you know, this young person has been showing me some of the things that they've been. You know, the only thing maybe that I can say is it's a project on developing a digital library. So that's really what it is. Yeah. What, you know, just in broad terms, you know. So that's yeah.
It's exciting. Let me see. We've got quite a few comments coming through, I must say. So a lot of people are saying that they are very much inspired by your words of advice. And I think it is true, especially with regards to positive self-talk. I think that's something that we can quite often forget, and we don't even realize when we're brewing that negativity inside of ourselves and how that affects us. Yeah. Someone is curious, who is Ntata Moropa outside the librarianship profession? Or what else are you doing outside of you? Who is Ntata Moropa outside the librarianship position? Profession.
Or what am I doing outside the library profession? Okay. Okay. I mentioned, for example, part of the circle of within your circle of influence is looking at your spiritual well-being. And so it's something that I pay particular attention to. And I quite for a long time, I would read and study scripture every day and so on. And So my wife and I, we were concerned about, for example, the high rate of divorce. And so, you know, and so we then embarked on a project already in the 1980s, you know, to try, you know, empower marriages. And we started a group of married people, and we said, look, let's empower ourselves and so on. And that group is still continuing, and it's going strong in the Eastern Cape. They've now invited us to go and speak to them. So what I then do, what we do is we run seminars, we run coaching sessions, mentorship sessions with married people. And sometimes we also assist in premarital counseling. And yeah, so yeah, that's what I do outside my, recently we ran a seminar at our church on marriage. And so in October, we're going to run a weekend-long seminar in Umtata. Yeah, so that's some of the things that I do. But yeah, obviously, one also, you need to work on projects that also bring you income. For that, I do, we have a property, it's a business property that we're renting out. And we're working on that, developing that, and so on. Yeah. So those are some of the things that I do. Yeah. But I must also say that I coach people, and there are people that are, after I worked with and so on, have decided that, no, look, I think we need to spend some time, and they said to me, look, you have helped me. I think I must begin paying you for sessions. How much do I pay you? And this is the difficulty I have. But in any way, so, but those are some of the things that I do. Yes, yeah.
So keeping current, keeping well-rounded. We are running short on time. I think I've got time just for one more quick question. There are a couple here though, but I'm sort of going down the list, and one of them was, so how do you ensure to stay current in the sector now after retiring from formal employment?
How do I say? Yeah, well, it's through reading, through participating in events like this, you know, through talking. Just last week, you know, I had lunch with my former colleague, and you know, talking about, and you know, and so on. So yeah, I do. Now and again, I do contact and talk to my successor, the person that came after me. That's Lindy, and yeah. So yes, we from time to time, yes, yeah, I do talk to people, yeah, in the profession, yes.
So keeping those connections.
Yeah, that's the network. Network is important. Yeah.
Maybe one more quick question was, Benford asks, which 3 books can you recommend on leadership? So relating to your earlier statements about keeping current with reading, which 3 books would you recommend?
Yeah, I would still, although this book was written a while back by Covey, you know, highly effective habits, you know, or, yeah, habits, 7 habits of highly effective people. I would recommend that book. I believe that it's got a lot of wealth of information. And another book that I'm reading is, it's a book by Rabbi Lapin. It's a book that talks about the biblical principle of business. It's got a lot of wisdom, and you know, I'm gaining quite a lot from it. And then the third one, yeah, you know, sometimes I sort of read quite a number of books that I'm reading now, it's on short. I've forgotten the author, but it's the title of the book. It's about imagination. And oh yeah, I'm reading books by books on the mind, that the growth and development of the mind. So there are quite a number of neuroscientists who've written books, for example, about the brain and so on. But I mean, if this, I can provide the person with the names of the authors and the titles of some of these books that I'm reading.
Maybe you can put together a little reading list for us.
I can, yes, I can do that. Yes, certainly I can do that. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Moropa. I must hand over to my colleague Ingrid now. She's going to close off the session for us. I just want to thank you once again, and
thank you.
I hope you get an opportunity to look at the comments in the chat box, because there are some very encouraging and great words of thanks. So thank you very much.
No, very much. I must just say thank you to IGBIS for this opportunity. I'm really grateful.
Thank you. Over to you, Ingrid.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, you already said thank you, so my job is to say thank you. So, but yes, it has really been a very inspirational talk, and filled with wisdom and things to think about and to go and read about and so forth. Colleagues, we thank you, that all the colleagues that have joined us today. We appreciate it, and that's what keeps us going. So if there are any other leaders that you want us to have conversation with, then drop us a line and we can make a plan. But we will continue this series of talks. And for right now, we'd like to take a photograph at the end of the session. So if you would like to put on your cameras, and then Kagiso can assist us with taking a photograph, please. So everyone put their cameras on. And Kagiso, if you could just let me know when you're done.
Oh, thank you. This is an opportunity to see quite a lot of familiar faces.
Okay. All right, colleagues, we thank you for your participation this morning. And especially to Mr. Moropa, we really appreciate your willingness to partake in these discussions. And yeah, that's it. We'll see you again in the next conversation. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Kagiso, are you around? I wonder if there's a way that we could capture the chat.
Yes. Let me quickly just save this.
Yes, I was going to ask the same question because I'm just
Yes.
Yeah, please. Yeah,
because I thought about it before, but I didn't actually get around to doing anything about it. Not only for the speakers, for yourself, Robert, because you probably won't have time to have read, while you're talking, all of the comments, but also for the article that we will write for the LIASA in Touch, and just for us to see sort of what the impact has been. Of course, the best impact and the best assessment is that people will take up leadership positions within LIASA. But if you have said something today that gets people, it's what they needed to hear today, then we'll take that as a win as well. I just wanted to reflect.
Thank you so much, Robbie.
Thank you. Thank you. One of my former colleagues, yeah.
Wonderful. I wanted to reflect to you, Robert, with the headphones on and the thing. You really did take us on a journey. I thought, oh, Captain is in the house. The captain of the flight. We're going on a.
No, I mean, what you're doing is really commendable, and we need to put a lot of input in the growth and development of leaders. And I offer my assistance, you know, if you need it in this area.
Yeah, well, one of the things that I think will be is fantastic is that this conversation is captured. You know, it's on, it's recorded. It will go on the LIASA YouTube channel. So you know, fantastic. It will have a wider reach than the people that we've reached today. And what I'm also trying to do, Robert, is other colleagues have said, you know, you've now put me onto something where I feel the need to write this down. So we are trying to put together a book.
Fantastic.
We are struggling to, I think I'm going to have to apply for funding because we're struggling to secure an editor. We, in the IGBIS community, in the committee, we are, you know, fully committed with events and sound. So it's not something that I think we want to take on. So we are looking around. We're keeping fingers for Sarah's connection, fingers crossed for Sarah's connection. But yeah, so we will be in contact probably again. And watch also, Robert, the social media posts, because sometimes people post on our IGBIS Twitter feed and Facebook feed as well. And there has been some very interesting comments there as well. And certainly people are receiving it very positively. And thank you for your words also, Robert. You know, sometimes one, as you say, you have experienced self-doubt what it is that you are setting out to do. So it's great to have positive feedback. Thanks very much.
No, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.